Before we begin, take a moment, just a moment, to think about someone you've lost. Someone whose absence didn't just leave a space in your life, but changed its shape entirely. Maybe it was sudden. Maybe there were things left unsaid. Maybe even now, you still find yourself wondering what you would do if you had just one more chance. This story lives in that question. At its heart, this is not a tale about time travel in the way you might expect. It isn't about history's great moments or changing the fate of the world. It's about something much quieter and far more human. It's about a son, a memory he never escaped, and the kind of grief that doesn't fade, it just learns to hide. Sam has carried one day with him for most of his life. A single morning, a goodbye he didn't know was final. Like so many of us, he has replayed it over and over again, wondering what might have happened if something, anything had been different. And then, impossibly, he is given that chance. But what does it really mean to go back? To step into a moment you were never meant to revisit? To stand face to face with someone you've already lost and try to change what comes next? As you listen, you may find yourself walking alongside him, caught between hope and doubt, between what we wish we could fix and what we must learn to live with. Because altering the past is never just about one moment. It ripples outward, touching everything, seen and unseen. This is a story about love that endures beyond time, about the weight of memory, and about the fragile, dangerous beauty of second chances. So settle in, let the world around you fade, and when you're ready, step back with him into the past.
The warmth of the morning sun seeped through the blinds, painting stripes of gold across his duvet and the worn floorboards of his NYC apartment. It was a familiar warmth, a comforting one, and it pulled Sam gently from his sleep. The city hummed its low, constant song, a distant siren, the rumble of the subway below, the impatient honk of a taxi somewhere out there in the concrete canyons. He stretched, blinking the phosphenes of sleep from his eyes, and the world swam into focus. Dust motes danced in the buttery light, tiny galaxies swirling in the stillness. His eyes landed on the faded vintage poster above his desk, a splash of color against the peeling paint. Beside it, his bookshelf overflowed with well-worn paperbacks, their spines cracked and pages dog-eared. Each one a memory, a story. This small space, crammed with the detritus of his life, felt like an extension of himself. Gentle wind wafted through the slightly cracked window, carrying with it the whiff of fresh pretzels from the vendor on the street corner, mingling with the ever-present tang of city exhaust. The sounds of the city seeped in more clearly now, the murmur of voices below, the chortle of children playing in the park, the soft strum of a street musician's guitar. He slipped out of bed, feeling the cool wood beneath his feet as he padded to his sunlit bathroom. After a steamy shower that left the room fogged and warm, he carefully shaved, making sure every line was sharp and clean. He took a moment to trim his eyebrows and clip his nails, keeping them in check. Small details, but they mattered. Then, he made himself a strong cup of coffee and slid 2 slices of bread into the toaster, the scent of it filling the air. As the toast browned, he slipped into his suit, sharp, tailored, ready. The clients he was meeting today, they would, no exaggeration, decide the course of the rest of his life. In simple terms, they had the power to make him a millionaire. He was a consultant for a high-end venture capital firm, specializing in startups that were on the cutting edge of technology and innovation. His job was to identify, assess, and pitch investment opportunities to some of the wealthiest people in the world. It was a world of high stakes, where one wrong move could mean the difference between success and failure, and where a single deal could set him up for life. These clients he was meeting today were investors with deep pockets and an appetite for risk, but also a keen eye for potential. They were the kind of people who could make or break a startup, who had the resources to turn an idea into a billion-dollar empire. And that's where he came in. Finding the diamonds in the rough, the businesses with a spark that others might overlook, and presenting them with the promise of a return on investment. Today's meetings were particularly crucial. If he played his cards right, he could secure the funding for a groundbreaking biotech company poised to revolutionize personalized medicine. The deal would not only secure his position at the firm but could also open doors to even bigger, more lucrative opportunities down the line. If he failed, though, it could mean weeks or months of scrambling to regain credibility, and maybe even the loss of his job. He wolfed down the toast and took a final sip of his coffee, feeling the caffeine crank his brain as the weight of the day pressed ahead. The morning sun cast a long yellow band of light across the room, and for a moment, he stood there, taking it all in. It was going to be a long day, but if everything went according to plan, it might just be the day that changed everything. "You got this," he told himself, grabbing the car key off the hook and walking out the door, only to stumble onto something. At his feet lay a small box. It looked like some kind of parcel drop-off, but this one was unwrapped, just a plain, bare box. He scooped it up, scanning it for a name. There was none. However, a picture of a small table clock was printed on the box, and the label read, "Temporal Ticker." Strange name, he thought, but he shrugged it off as some sort of anonymous gift. He quickly brought it inside and set it down on his bed. A quick glance at his watch reminded him that he was running late. He rushed out of his apartment, down a flight of stairs, and once he was in his car, he pressed the gas, zipping like a comet through the city. Nailed it was the word. His pitch had gone perfectly, and by the time the meeting ended, he could have sworn that those four white-collared snobs had creams in their pants. On his way back, all he could think about was those zeros that were soon going to swell his account. Strange, isn't it? Zero, meaning nothing, and yet it could make all the difference. When he finally reached his place, it was 9 in the night. He flicked on the fluorescent light. It buzzed to life with a tired hum. He let out a long sigh, kicking off his shoes and dropping his bag onto the floor. Ah, life, he thought, remembering the roller coaster of emotions he'd ridden that day. It wasn't a cold night, but the weather was surely not one to inspire a shower. Still, he thought it'd feel nice to just stand under some warm water and let the day wash away. Sure, the day might have just been the pivotal point of his life, the pitch that could make or break his career, but it had been a stressful one nonetheless, filled with anxiety and performance pressure. He ordered a large pizza, extra cheese, all the toppings. The delivery was due in 40 minutes, ample time to unwind in the bathroom. He undressed and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water cascade over him. It felt like liquid silk, easing the tension from his muscles and soothing his mind. Either the order was early, or he had been lost in the bliss of the shower for too long, because the doorbell rang while he was still rinsing the shampoo from his hair. No way it's been 40 minutes already, he thought, but his intuition was wrong. Wrapped in a towel, he opened the door to find the pizza boy looking thoroughly annoyed. His lips were pressed into a thin line, and his eyes had a definite glint of impatience. "Sir, did I just wake you up?" the boy asked, the forced cheerfulness in his voice failing to mask his irritation. "I've been ringing for quite some time." He cringed, realizing he'd kept him waiting for a long time. "I am so sorry," he stammered, grabbing his wallet and handing the boy a generous tip. "Please accept my apologies." He had not eaten anything all day, save for a cup of iced latte and a pineapple puff, and he attacked the pizza without a moment's delay. The pizza was devoured in record time, a testament to both its deliciousness and his ravenous hunger. With a satisfied groan, he crumpled the empty box and tossed it aside. Reaching for the remote, he flicked on the TV, ready to zone out to some mindless entertainment. But before the screen could even flicker to life, his gaze snagged on the box sitting innocently on his bed, the temporal ticker. Wave of curiosity washed over him. He had completely forgotten about the mysterious package in the whirlwind of the day. Switching off the TV, he scooted closer, intrigued. Outside, the city's symphony continued. A distant siren wailed. A car alarm chirped insistently, and the muffled bass of music thumped from a nearby club. But in his little apartment, a strange hush had fallen, as if the air itself held its breath in anticipation. With eager fingers, he tore open the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft velvet, lay a clock unlike any he'd ever seen. It was circular, with a sleek, metallic design. But instead of the usual 2 or 3 hands, it had 6, each one a different length and color, ticking away at varying speeds. Beneath the clock face, tiny engravings labeled each hand: year, month, date, hour, minute, second. His brow furrowed. What kind of clock needed to track time with such precision? Lifting the clock, he discovered a small compartment beneath it containing a slim instruction manual. He unfolded it, his heart pounding with a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. The manual began with a stark warning in bold letters. Caution. This device allows for temporal displacement. Unlike your vanilla alarm clocks, you can use it to set an alarm for the past. Use with extreme caution. Alterations to the past, however minor, may have unforeseen and potentially significant consequences. His pulse quickened. Skipping ahead, he found the section on setting the alarm. To activate temporal displacement, set the 6 hands to the desired year, month, date, hour, minute, and second. Once the desired temporal coordinates are set, press and hold the crown for 5 seconds. The clock will emit a low hum, indicating that the temporal alarm is set. Upon falling asleep within 1 hour of setting the alarm, the user will be transported to the designated point in the past. The user will remain in the past until their present-day self awakens. Note: temporal dilation occurs at a ratio of 60:1. For every minute experienced in the present, 1 hour will pass in the past. A shiver ran down his spine as he tried to wrap his head around the concept. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel. But then again, he was holding a time travel device in his hand. So clearly, the impossible was now possible. He reread the passage, a sense of disbelief battling with growing excitement. Perhaps it was some kind of side effect of bending the laws of physics, he mused. Maybe the fabric of space-time stretched and warped during time travel, causing time to flow at different rates in the past and present. Or maybe it was a built-in safety mechanism, allowing the user to experience more of the past without significantly altering the present. Whatever the reason, the implications were clear. He could spend hours, even days, exploring the past, while only minutes ticked by in his own time. A shiver ran through him again. Was this some elaborate prank? A hoax? Or could this incredible device actually be real? He stared at the clock, its intricate hands ticking away, a gateway to the past resting in his hands. The possibilities, the implications, were staggering. The clock, its 6 alien hands ticking in their own strange rhythms, seemed to watch him as he paced the small, cluttered space of his apartment. It wasn't just an object anymore. It felt alive. A thing of intention. A thing waiting. He stared at it from across the room, a chill pricking the back of his neck. The city outside buzzed with its usual symphony of life. But inside these 4 walls, everything had changed. The air was heavier, dense with possibility and the suffocating weight of a decision he wasn't sure he wanted to make. His mind spun with the enormity of it. Time travel. It was a concept that belonged in movies and books, not in his hands, not in his apartment. He rubbed his temples, his thoughts circling like vultures. What if it's real? What if it's a trick? The words from the instruction manual echoed in his mind. Use with extreme caution. Alterations to the past, however minor, may have unforeseen and potentially significant consequences. Consequences? What did that even mean? Could he destroy the world by stepping on the wrong patch of grass in 1923? Or would it be subtler? Like a pebble thrown into a pond, ripples spreading outward, quietly changing everything? He stopped pacing and turned to look at the clock again. Its sleek, metallic surface reflected the faint glow of his bedside lamp. It seemed out of place here, like something that had no business existing in a world of peeling wallpaper and secondhand furniture. He sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The allure of it was too much to ignore. He could go anywhere, see anything, be anything. His mind latched onto history's greatest moments. He could be there when Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, watch the genius at work. He could stand in the streets of Paris during the French Revolution, hear the roar of the crowd, feel the charge of rebellion in the air. He could witness the Titanic's maiden voyage, see the splendor of it before tragedy struck. But these thoughts felt hollow, empty. He realized that no matter how grand the moment, it wasn't what he truly wanted. His past, not the world's, was where his pain lived, where his need lived. And then, like a whisper rising above the noise of his thoughts, the memory came. May 13th, 2000. His stomach twisted as he thought about that day, a wound he'd never truly let heal. He was 10 years old. His mother had kissed him on the cheek that morning before leaving the house, her laugh lingering in the air as she teased him about his messy hair. "You'll charm the girls someday," she'd said, her voice warm, musical. She never came back. The details were burned into his brain. The tanker had hit her car on a stretch of highway she always took to avoid the rush hour madness. The rain had made the road slick, and the impact had been instant. He didn't even understand what instant meant at the time, not fully. All he knew was that one moment his mother was alive, vibrant, and the next, she was gone, like a flame snuffed out by a cruel, unseen hand. He remembered his father's voice trembling as he explained what had happened. The way the world had gone silent, as if the universe itself had stopped caring. He had cried so hard that day he thought he might shatter from it, and the pain of it, the helplessness, had stayed with him ever since. But now, he had a chance to go back. To that day, to that moment. He could warn her. He could stop her. He could save her. He stood abruptly, the decision settling over him like a second skin. He picked up the clock, its weight heavier than he expected. It wasn't just a device. It was a burden, a hope, a risk. His fingers trembled as he turned the tiny dials. 2000, May 13, 7 a.m. He could see her face in his mind, bright and full of life. She would still be alive then, sipping her coffee, reading the paper, humming one of those old songs she loved. He hesitated again, his thumb hovering over the crown. What if it didn't work? Or worse, what if it did, but something went horribly wrong? He shoved the doubts aside. He had to try. With a deep breath, he pressed the crown and held it for 5 seconds. The clock emitted a low hum, a sound that vibrated in his chest, almost alive. It sent a shiver through him, raising the hairs on his arms. He stared at it, half expecting the room to explode into light or the walls to melt away, but nothing happened. The clock was still, quiet, waiting. He set it on the bedside table, his heart hammering. Sleep. That was the final step. He needed to fall asleep within an hour of setting the alarm. But how could he possibly sleep with his mind racing like this? He grabbed the bottle of sleeping pills from his drawer, twisting off the cap with shaky hands. 2 pills. He swallowed them dry, their bitter taste lingering on his tongue. He lay down, pulling the blanket over him as if it could shield him from the weight of what he'd just done. The clock ticked beside him, the sound magnified in the silence of the room. It wasn't like an ordinary clock. The ticks were sharp, deliberate, the 6 hands peeling off time like a parade into the past. The minutes stretched on, and sleep remained elusive. His thoughts refused to quiet. Would he see her smile again? Hear her voice? Would she believe him when he told her not to drive that day? Or would she brush it off, like one of his silly childhood fears? The sleeping pills began to take hold, his body growing heavy, his mind fogging at the edges. The ticking of the clock softened, blurring into the rhythm of his heartbeat. His eyes fluttered closed, and the last thing he saw before the darkness claimed him was the faint glow of the clock's hands, spinning slowly, surely, carrying him backward through time. And then there was nothing, only silence, only sleep, only the past waiting for him. The first thing he noticed was the air. It was clean and cloying, like spring after a rainstorm, carrying a faint whiff of wildflowers. It was the kind of air that filled your lungs and made you feel more alive. He blinked against the brightness of the sunlight. It was golden, warmer than he remembered, like it had been poured straight from heaven. When his eyes adjusted, he realized he was lying in a small field overgrown with witch grass and baby's breath. The soil felt soggy under the small of his back. Tiny globes of rain glistened on the grass blades. The sky above him was impossibly blue, unmarred by smog or streaking jet trails. A bird lifted a call somewhere to his left, a cheerful, lilting tune that seemed to say, "Welcome back." He sat up slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't in his apartment anymore, wasn't in 2024 anymore. Everything was too vivid, too crisp. He ran his hands over the ground, the cool blades of grass bending under his touch. This couldn't be real, and yet it was. The world around him felt different. The trees in the distance were taller, their foliage fuller, untouched by years of city expansion. The hum of traffic was faint, as though the city's pulse had slowed. Rising to his feet, he turned in a slow circle, taking in the scene and the unfamiliar quiet of a world that hadn't yet caught up to his own. He began walking, following a narrow dirt path that seemed to lead toward the neighborhood. As he approached, his breath caught. The houses were fewer, smaller, spread farther apart. Instead of concrete and steel, there were wide-open yards dotted with pots of poinsettia and chrysanthemums, some fenced in with white pickets tangled with vines, others with wild hedges. Old oak trees lined the streets, their sprawling limbs casting shimmering shadows. The cars parked along the road were boxy, their paint glossy but dated, yellows, reds, and blues that spoke of another era. He saw a rusty green sedan roll by, its engine growling, and realized it was the same make his father used to drive, though it had long since been junked. And the people, he hadn't thought about how different they'd look. Women wore high-waisted jeans and pastel blouses. Men sported loose, casual shirts tucked into khakis. Kids darted past on scooters and bikes with bright plastic tassels streaming from the handlebars. Everyone moved slower, less hurried, like they had all the time in the world. Then he saw her. She was small, her dark curls bouncing as she skipped down the sidewalk, her hand clasped firmly in her grandfather's. He knew that face, knew it even though it had been so many years. Emily. She'd been his best friend once, his partner in every childhood crime. He had been at her wedding 2 years ago, watched her father give her away. But here she was, a little girl again, her face alight with innocent joy, her grandfather, long gone from a stroke, walking beside her, smiling. The sight hit him like a punch to the chest. Memories flooded in. Long summer days spent racing their bikes, daring each other to jump from the highest branch of the old oak in her backyard. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move, as if the sheer weight of the past was too much to carry. He forced himself to keep walking. He couldn't stop now, not when the clock was ticking. His house came into view, and his steps faltered. It was smaller than he remembered, its paint a fresh, bright white instead of the faded, peeling gray it had been when they sold it years later. The yard was neater too, the hedges trimmed, the garden bursting with flowers his mother had tended to herself. And then he heard her voice. "Sam, eat your breakfast before it gets cold." The sound of it made his knees weak. He hadn't realized how much he'd forgotten. The trill of her voice, the warmth in her tone, the edge of exasperation she always wore like a badge. He crept closer, peering through the front window. Inside, his 10-year-old self sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed, a fierce scowl on his face. His mother stood at the stove, her back to him, hands on her hips. He could almost smell the pancakes she was cooking, the faint sweetness mingling with the earthy aroma of coffee. His younger self whined about the syrup being too sticky, and she turned, pointing the spatula at him like a weapon. "Don't start with me, mister," she said, though her lips twitched with a suppressed smile. His chest ached. She was right there, alive, breathing, talking. It was too much, and not enough. He wanted to burst through the door, to hug her, to tell her he loved her, but he didn't. Not yet. He had a plan. He would go with her when she left the house. He'd ask for a ride, pretend he needed to be dropped off somewhere. He'd convince her to take a different route, away from the highway, away from the accident. She wasn't leaving for another hour, though. He needed time to clear his head, to think. The coffee shop down the street was still there. Or, rather, it would be there. And he decided to go. The bell over the door jingled as he stepped inside. The place was smaller, homier, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. He ordered a coffee and a vanilla croissant, the woman behind the counter giving him a long, suspicious look. "You new around here?" she asked, her eyes flicking to his jacket. He realized with a jolt how out of place he looked. His modern clothes, his sleek shoes, the faint scent of aftershave. "Just passing through," he mumbled. The coffee tasted strange, less bitter, lighter somehow. He ate quickly, his heart hammering with anticipation. Every tick of the wall clock seemed to echo in his ears, tugging him closer to the time that would change everything. When the hour was almost up, he left, his pulse picking with each step back to the house. His mother's car was already running, and she stood by the driver's side, fumbling with her keys. "This is it," he thought, swallowing hard. "It's now or never." The car idled in the driveway, a faint plume of exhaust curling into the crisp morning air. She stood beside it, keys in hand, her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail, strands of it escaping to frame her face. Her coat hung open, revealing a soft blue sweater that made her eyes shine in the early sunlight. He paused a few feet away, his chest tight with emotions he couldn't name. It felt impossible to move closer, impossible to speak, and yet he had no choice. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he called, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. She turned, startled at first, but her expression softened into a polite smile. "Oh, hello. Can I help you?" He forced himself to step forward, his hands shoved into his pockets to hide their trembling. "I'm, new in the neighborhood," he said, the words feeling clunky and false. "Just moved in down the street. I was wondering, are you heading out? I was hoping I might catch a ride. My car's acting up, and I need to get into town." Her brows knit together for a moment as she sized him up, her gaze flicking briefly to the house where her son, his younger self, was still throwing a tantrum over breakfast. "Oh," she said, hesitating. "Well, I wasn't planning on it, but I guess it wouldn't be too much trouble. Where are you headed?" He hesitated, caught off guard by her straightforwardness. "Just downtown," he said quickly. "Anywhere near the center will be fine." She nodded, smiling again. "Sure, hop in." As he opened the passenger door and slid inside, he couldn't help but steal glances at her. Up close, she was so much like the memories he'd clung to all these years, and yet entirely different. Her movements were easy, unburdened, as if life hadn't yet had the chance to weigh her down. And the strangest part of all, she was younger than him now, by almost a decade. The realization made his stomach churn. He was sitting next to his mother, but he was the older one, the protector. He had lived more years than she had, seen more, endured more. It was a thought so disorienting he almost didn't hear her when she spoke. "So, new in the neighborhood, huh?" she said, pulling the car into reverse. "You seem familiar. Have we met before?" He swallowed hard. "No, I don't think so. I just moved in. Maybe you've seen someone who looks like me." She glanced at him, her eyes narrowing in thought. "You know," she said after a moment, her voice softer, "you remind me of someone." His heart thudded painfully. "Oh, who's that?" She smiled, a little wistful. "My son. He's only 10 now, but I don't know, there's something about you. The way you carry yourself, the way you look. I bet he'll look like you when he grows up." He felt his throat tighten, and he had to look away, pretending to watch the scenery as they turned onto the main road. The houses thinned out quickly, giving way to long stretches of trees and empty lots. The rain from the night before had left the pavement slick, dark patches reflecting the soft morning light. "What's he like?" he asked, his voice catching. "Your son." Her face lit up at the question. and he felt an ache so deep it was almost physical. "Oh, he's a handful," she said, laughing softly. "But he's a good kid. Smart, curious, always asking questions. Sometimes I think he's too smart for his own good, you know?" He nodded, unable to stop himself from smiling. "Sounds like a great kid." She glanced at him again, her expression warm. "He is. He can drive me crazy sometimes, but I love him more than anything. Being his mom, it's the best thing I've ever done." His chest felt like it might cave in. He wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to say, "I'm right here, Mom. It's me. I missed you so much." But he couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he took a deep breath and said, "You're lucky. He's lucky, too, to have a mom like you." She laughed, a little embarrassed. "Oh, stop. You're going to make me blush." As they drove, he kept an eye on the road, his pulse quickening as they neared the turn for the highway. The accident played out in his mind again, sharp and vivid, and he knew he had to act. "Hey," he said, his tone casual despite the urgency twisting inside him. "You might want to avoid the highway today. I heard there was some construction or something. Could cause a lot of delays." She frowned, glancing at him. "Really? I hadn't heard anything." "Yeah," he lied. "Just a heads up. Might be better to take the back roads." She considered this for a moment, her fingers tapping on the steering wheel. Then she shrugged. "Well, if you say so. I hate sitting in traffic anyway." Relief washed over him as she turned onto a different route, the highway slipping out of sight behind them. The back roads were quieter, lined with tall pines that glistened with rainwater. The air through the cracked window smelled fresh and earthy, the faintest hint of wet asphalt mingling with the crisp scent of leaves. "Thanks for the tip," she said, glancing at him with a smile. "Looks like this was the better choice." "No problem," he said, his voice tight. He forced himself to relax, to let the moment settle. The worst was over. She was safe. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the quiet hum of the engine and the occasional splash of water from puddles filling the space between them. When they neared the edge of downtown, he pointed to a corner. "You can drop me off here," he said. "Thanks for the ride." She pulled over, her brow furrowing slightly. "Are you sure? It's no trouble to take you closer." "No, this is perfect," he said, opening the door and stepping out. He leaned down, meeting her gaze one last time. "Thanks again. Really?" She smiled, that same warm smile that had been his lifeline so many times as a child. "Anytime. Take care of yourself, okay?" He nodded, stepping back as she drove away, the car's taillights disappearing around the corner. Only then did he let himself exhale, his legs shaking as he leaned against a lamppost. "She's safe. She's alive. I did it." And for the first time in years, he let himself believe it. The hotel was a plain, unremarkable place on the edge of town, the kind that didn't ask questions. Its neon vacancy sign buzzed faintly in the window as he checked in, avoiding the receptionist's curious glance. The room was small, sparsely furnished with a lumpy bed, a scuffed desk, and a chair that wobbled when he tested it. The air smelled faintly of bleach and stale carpet, but it was enough. He needed somewhere to wait, somewhere to think. And thinking was all he could do. As he paced the room, his heart raced with a toxic cocktail of excitement and dread. "I just tampered with time." The thought pulsed in his head, an unrelenting drumbeat. He had done it. He'd changed the course of history, no matter how small. But now the enormity of it weighed on him. What if the smallest shift, a missed exit, a delay, a slight turn in her route, had far-reaching consequences? What if he'd saved his mother from one accident only to send her into another? He sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The possibilities clawed at him. What if the ripple effect of her survival spread far beyond his family? What if someone else was meant to be in that accident and, spared, went on to do something terrible? A warlord, a dictator, a decision-maker whose absence might have changed the world. And what about the reverse? What if saving her led to something good being erased? Some pivotal moment that shaped the future for the better? He thought of the butterfly effect, the way a single flap of wings could create a hurricane across the globe. He had flapped more than wings. He'd thrown a stone into the delicate fabric of time and was now waiting for the ripples to crash back into him. The hours crawled by. He tried to distract himself, flipping through the television channels only to find old sitcoms and infomercials. The laughter on the screen felt hollow, a mocking echo of his own nervous thoughts. Every glance at the clock sent a fresh wave of anxiety through him. The evening couldn't come fast enough. What if she didn't come home? The question gnawed at him. He imagined her taking a wrong turn, ending up on another unfamiliar road. A twist of fate that led to the same tragic end. He clenched his fists, his breath shallow. His thoughts churned as he lay back in the lumpy hotel bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling that spidered outward like his doubts. Should I have just grabbed her? Begged her not to drive at all? The idea gnawed at him, burrowing deeper with each passing moment. It seemed simple now, in hindsight. If he had stopped her outright, physically prevented her from leaving, maybe he wouldn't have had to endure this day of relentless worry, this tightrope walk over the chasm of time. He imagined himself rushing up to her, gripping her arms, and pleading with her to stay home. But even as the thought unfolded, he knew it was fantasy. No, that wouldn't have worked. For one thing, it would have created a scene. She would have called for help or worse, slammed the door in his face, frightened by the stranger who suddenly seemed unhinged. A small-town neighborhood like this wasn't like the city. People noticed things. A man acting out of place, panicked and desperate, would have drawn attention faster than a flame to dry leaves. And what would he have said to convince her? The truth? I'm your son from the future. You're going to die if you leave today. The absurdity of it made him shudder. She wouldn't have believed him. Why would she? Even if she had paused long enough to listen, the more likely reaction would have been to laugh nervously and dismiss him as a weirdo, someone making up stories to scare her. That would have been the end of it. She still would have left. By the time the sun began to sink, his nerves were stretched taut. He left the hotel and made his way back to the neighborhood, keeping to the shadows, his heart pounding with every step. The air had cooled, the lingering dampness from the previous night's rain mingling with the scent of freshly cut grass. The lawns buzzed with the hum of crickets, their rhythmic chorus rising as the light faded. The sky was streaked with oranges and purples, the last rays of sunlight catching on the leaves of the trees, painting them gold. Streetlights began flickering on one by one, their pale, artificial glow cutting through the deepening dusk. The street itself was quiet, almost serene, lined with modest homes and the occasional parked car. Porch lights illuminated scattered patches of grass, and the faint sound of a radio drifted from an open window. He found a spot across the street from his childhood home, hidden by the thick trunk of an old oak. His eyes never left the house, scanning every shadow, every movement. Inside, the lights were on, warm and inviting. He could see the faint outline of his younger self at the dining table, his father pacing in the kitchen. And then he heard it, the distant rumble of an engine. His breath caught, and he leaned forward, gripping the rough bark of the tree. The car appeared at the end of the street, its headlights cutting through the growing darkness. It rolled slowly toward the house, the familiar green sedan unmistakable. His mother was behind the wheel. Relief hit him like a wave, so sudden and overwhelming that his knees nearly gave out. She was safe. She had made it. The car pulled into the driveway, its tires crunching softly on the gravel. She stepped out, her face relaxed, a faint smile playing on her lips as she grabbed a bag from the passenger seat. She glanced up at the house, her expression softening as she saw the lights inside. The door opened, and his younger self ran out, arms flailing as he called for her. She laughed, crouching down to greet him, pulling him into a tight hug. The sound of her laughter floated across the yard, light and musical, and for a moment, everything felt right. He pressed his back against the tree, closing his eyes, letting the tension drain from his body. The night air wrapped around him, cool and soothing, and he allowed himself to breathe for the first time in what felt like hours. She was home. She was safe. He lingered for a while longer, watching the house, the faint glow of its windows, the soft hum of life within. The cricket's song grew louder, mingling with the occasional murmur of voices from other homes. He stayed until the porch light clicked off and the house settled into quiet stillness, a beacon of safety in the dark. As he walked back to the hotel under the watchful gaze of the stars, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Whatever came next, he had given his mother another day. And for now, that was enough. Days passed like lifetimes. Each morning in the past stretched endlessly, and every minute dragged under the weight of his waiting. He wandered the quiet streets, the familiar neighborhood both comforting and alien in its 2000 form. The temporal dilation was relentless. 1 minute in the present, 1 hour in the past. What had felt like a quick decision to his future self became an agonizing stretch of time for him here. Days blurred into nights, and the hours hung heavy with questions. What would happen when the time was up? Would the world dissolve around him? Would he simply vanish, ripped back to the present? Or would the past trap him forever, caught between the decision he'd made and the consequences he'd unleashed? He stayed in the hotel most of the time, the anonymity of its stale, impersonal space giving him the solitude he needed to think. But the thinking drove him mad. Each sunrise brought new doubts. Each sunset whispered a warning. Fate isn't something you cheat. And then it happened. He woke in the dim hotel room to find the edges of the world unraveling. It began as a faint shimmer, like heat waves rippling in the distance. The walls of the room shimmered, then faded. The bed beneath him lost its weight, as if he were floating on air. He reached out, his hand meeting nothing but empty space as the room dissolved in slow, cascading waves. Panic clawed at him, but there was no time to act. The world folded in on itself, colors bleeding away like wet ink on paper. He felt a pull, a force as inevitable as gravity, yanking him from the fabric of the past and hurling him forward. And then it was over. The first thing he noticed was the smell of coffee, rich and warm, mingled with the faint aroma of toasted bread. He blinked, his vision swimming as the room came into focus. His room, but it wasn't quite his room. The walls were the same, but the furniture was slightly different, newer. There was more space now. He sat up, heart racing, and realized he was in a 2-bedroom apartment. The morning sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting golden stripes on the polished floorboards. In the distance, he heard the clink of utensils, the soft hum of a radio playing jazz, and the mechanical pop of the toaster ejecting its finished slices. His breath caught. No, it couldn't be. He stumbled out of bed, his bare feet hitting the cool floor as he moved toward the kitchen. The voices drifted closer now, low and familiar. His father's voice, steady and calm, reading the morning news aloud. And they're saying the market might rally again next week, his father was saying. Good timing on that deal of yours yesterday, son. Impressive work. He froze, gripping the doorframe as his heart thundered in his chest. His father sat at the dining table, newspapers spread in front of him, a steaming mug of coffee at his elbow. He looked older than he remembered, grayer, but the same steady presence he had always been. His father glanced up, his face lighting with a smile. There you are, his father said. Coffee's on the counter. Busy day ahead? He couldn't speak. His eyes darted to the kitchen, and there she was, his mother. She stood by the counter, her back to him, buttering a piece of toast. Her movements were easy, unhurried, her shoulders relaxed. She wore a loose sweater, her hair streaked with gray, tied back in a simple ponytail. She turned slightly, holding the plate of toast, and froze when she saw him standing there. Her face was older, lines etched into her skin, faint crow's feet at the corners of her eyes. But those eyes, warm and familiar, were unmistakable. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. She's alive. Mom, he whispered, the word breaking like glass on his tongue. Her brows furrowed. Sam, are you feeling okay? He didn't answer. Instead, he crossed the room in 3 quick strides and threw his arms around her. The plate of toast clattered onto the counter as he pulled her close, holding her as tightly as he dared. She smelled faintly of lavender and coffee, and her warmth seeped into him like sunlight after a long, cold winter. "Oh my God," he said, his voice cracking as tears spilled from his eyes. "Mom, his words caught in his throat, replaced by a sob. "I missed you so much." She stiffened in surprise, her hands hovering awkwardly before settling on his back. "Sam, what's going on? Are you crying?" Her tone was concerned but tinged with confusion. She pulled back slightly to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "What's gotten into you?" He couldn't answer. He couldn't explain. All he could do was drink in the sight of her, the sound of her voice, the way she smelled and felt and existed. "I love you," he said finally, his voice trembling. "Promise me you'll never leave. Promise me." She blinked, startled, but then her face softened into a smile. "Oh, honey," she said, brushing a tear from his cheek. "I'm not going anywhere. You know that." He nodded, clutching her hand as if letting go would make her disappear. From the corner of his eye, he noticed something strange. The clock was gone. The temporal ticker, the device that had brought him here, had vanished, as if it had fulfilled its purpose and dissolved into the fabric of time itself. His mother tilted her head, still puzzled by his sudden burst of emotion, but she said nothing. Instead, she hugged him again, tighter this time, as if to reassure him that she was real. The sunlight poured through the windows, bathing the room in a warm glow. The faint clatter of a fork against a plate, the soft rustle of the newspaper, the hum of the jazz radio. It was all so achingly normal, and for the first time in years, he felt whole. Whatever had happened, whatever the cost, he had her back, and he wasn't going to waste another moment.